We're counting down the top 30 arcade games that defined the 1980s, ranking everything from quirky cult classics to pop culture titans. These games earned their spots through groundbreaking controls, explosive competition, and the lasting memories they created for a generation. From wild physics and button-mashing rivalries to iconic mascots and hardware breakthroughs, this list promises surprises and nostalgia in equal measure. Which title secured the ultimate arcade legacy? Let's start the countdown with number 20. Joust, released in 1982 by Williams, tossed players into a surreal aerial arena where knights rode giant ostriches instead of trusty steeds. The game's controls broke the mold. Flapping wings wasn't automatic. You had to tap a button for every beat, feeling the weight and momentum of each lift. Mastering the rhythm was half the challenge. With lava pits below and enemy buzzards circling, the action was relentless. The single-screen battleground became a stage for both rivalry and teamwork, as two players could join forces or turn on each other for eggs and high scores. Egg collection after a successful joust added a frantic scramble, rewarding quick reflexes. Joust's unique physics and competitive spirit made it a favorite in arcades, earning its place in gaming history for transforming how players battled and cooperated on a single cabinet. Track and Field, released by Konami in 1983, turned Olympic events into a wild test of speed and stamina, both for players and the arcade machines themselves. Each cabinet featured a lineup of 6 mini-games, from the 100-meter dash to the long jump, all demanding rapid-fire button mashing to outpace rivals and set world records. The race for high scores wasn't just about skill, it became a spectacle, with crowds gathering to watch friends hammer the controls at breakneck speed. Operators soon noticed cabinets wearing out at an alarming rate. Buttons jammed, panels cracked, and repair logs filled up, all thanks to the game's physical demands. Track and Field's blend of Olympic spirit and frenzied competition made it a fixture in arcades, earning its spot as a true cultural fad of the era. Contra, unleashed by Konami in 1987, cranked arcade intensity to a fever pitch. Players charged through bullet-riddled jungles and alien fortresses, dodging instant death projectiles at every turn. The real hook? Two friends could team up, blasting enemies from all angles with the spread gun power-up, an upgrade so coveted it sparked real-life scrambles for the first grab. Every mistake meant losing a life, and the continued countdown demanded another quarter to keep the action going. Boss battles filled the screen with chaos, pushing reflexes and teamwork to the brink. The punishing difficulty, tuned for short but explosive sessions, kept quarters flowing and legends growing. Myths about secret codes swirled, but only home versions ever offered the famous Konami code. In arcades, survival came down to skill, grit, and a pocket full of change. Frogger, released in 1981 by Konami, delivered a simple yet instantly gripping challenge: guide a frog across 5 busy lanes of traffic and a river packed with hazards. The controls needed only a joystick, but every move demanded perfect timing and sharp judgment. Success meant dodging cars, leaping logs, and finally landing safely on one of the coveted home pads. This easy-to-understand premise drew everyone, kids, parents, even grandparents, turning Frogger into a magnet for players of all ages. Its catchy theme and playful design spilled into pop culture, spawning TV cameos and even a hit novelty song. With each round, the action looped back to the start, ramping up the pace, but never losing that clear universal appeal. Frogger's blend of accessibility and iconic style secured its spot as a true arcade classic, recognized far beyond the walls of any game room. Double Dragon crashed into arcades in 1987, turning every street corner on screen into a battleground for two. Players stepped into the shoes of Billy and Jimmy Lee, fighting their way through gangs to rescue a kidnapped girlfriend. A simple plot, but one that fueled every punch, kick, and flying elbow. The cabinet's controls mapped out a new language for brawling: directional attacks, jump kicks, and the thrill of grabbing a weapon off the ground, baseball bats, whips, even barrels. each changing the flow of combat. For the first time, two players could cooperate in real time, working together or occasionally turning on each other when the final boss fell. That endgame twist, forced to fight your friend for the ultimate prize, became the stuff of playground legend. Double Dragon's lane-based movement and combo system spawned a wave of imitators, defining the beat-em-up genre and setting the stage for ever grittier urban adventures. Space Harrier blasted into arcades in 1985, dropping players into a kaleidoscopic world at breakneck speed. Sega's engineers pulled off a technical feat with their sprite-scaling hardware, creating the illusion of racing forward through a three-dimensional landscape, even as the ground beneath you rolled in a dizzying checkerboard. The sit-down cockpit cabinet made the experience feel more like a theme park ride than a typical arcade game. An analog flight stick gave players smooth, responsive control, while the booming "Get Ready" voice sample set the stage for a visual onslaught. Parallax layers and massive enemy sprites flew toward the screen, making each session a sensory rush. The premium cabinet price kept Space Harrier from flooding every arcade, but for those who climbed in, it was an unforgettable leap into the future of gaming spectacle. Pole Position, released by Namco in 1982, put players behind the wheel in a way no arcade game had before. The cabinet came equipped with a real steering wheel, gear shifter, and foot pedals, letting racers feel every curve of the track. For the first time, the game's perspective matched a driver's seat view, an innovation that set the standard for racing games to come. Before each race, players had to qualify with a solo time trial echoing real-world motorsport rituals. The main course, modeled after Japan's Fuji Speedway, was more than just a backdrop. It demanded precision steering and careful throttle control. Under the hood, optical steering encoders translated every movement, delivering a tactile sense of speed and tension. Pole Position's cabinets quickly became some of the highest earners in arcades, and its force feedback wheel and track licensing blueprint influenced every racer that followed. Missile Command launched in 1980, putting players in charge of defending 6 cities from a relentless barrage of incoming missiles. The trackball and 3-button setup demanded split-second decisions, one hand guiding the crosshair, the other juggling a trio of anti-missile batteries. Every round brought a fresh wave, faster and more overwhelming than the last, echoing the anxiety that defined the Cold War years. Designer Dave Thurer poured his own nightmares about nuclear war into the game, crafting a scenario where survival always felt just out of reach. There's no way to win, only the haunting the end screen as the final city falls. For arcade goers, the tension wasn't just about high scores, but about grappling with the era's deepest fears, one desperate interception at a time. That raw emotional punch is why Missile Command still resonates even with its simple graphics. Dragon's Lair hit arcades in 1983 with a spectacle no one had seen before. Full motion animation that looked straight out of a movie theater, not a game cabinet. Don Bluth's hand-drawn visuals played from a hidden Pioneer Laserdisc player, letting players guide Dirk the Daring with quick joystick flicks and a single button. Every move triggered a new animated scene, and the game's attract mode drew crowds who weren't even there to play. But the magic came at a cost. Cabinets sold for nearly $5,000, and a single play cost 50 cents, twice the norm. Operators faced a constant battle with breakdowns. The LDV-1000 Laserdisc players inside were notorious for skipping, overheating, or failing outright, sometimes within days. Disk rot and mechanical issues meant repair logs filled up fast and downtime was common. Still, long lines formed for the chance to play, even if the adventure was often cut short by a hardware hiccup. Defender, released by Williams in 1981, demanded more from players than almost any cabinet in the arcade. The control panel looked intimidating, a joystick for altitude plus 5 separate buttons: thrust left, thrust right, fire, smart bomb, and hyperspace. Each one had to be mastered to survive even a single wave. The wraparound map meant threats came from every direction, forcing constant vigilance as you zipped back and forth, rescuing stranded humanoids before they were snatched by alien abductors. Hyperspace offered a last-ditch escape, but could just as easily warp you straight into danger. The learning curve was steep, but those who conquered it became legends, racking up scores that drew crowds and kept quarters flowing. Defender's punishing difficulty and complex controls built its reputation as the ultimate test of arcade skill, a badge of honor for anyone who could last more than a few frantic minutes. Punch-Out! Landed in arcades in 1984 and immediately stood out thanks to its towering dual-screen cabinet, a rare sight on the floor. One monitor showed the fighters while the other kept the crowd locked on scores and stats, building a spectacle around every match. Players faced off against a colorful roster from the hapless Glass Joe to the hulking Bald Bull, each with their own taunts and signature moves. Winning wasn't about wild button presses. It was about reading patterns, timing dodges, and landing the perfect punch when the KO meter flashed. The trash talk and voice samples brought these cartoonish boxers to life, making every bout feel personal. Punch-Out! Proved that sports games could be more than just numbers. They could have real character, drama, and showmanship, paving the way for the fighting game boom that followed. Street Fighter arrived in arcades in 1987 and brought something new to the floor. Two cabinets facing off, each with a joystick and a set of pressure-sensitive buttons. The harder you hit, the stronger your punch or kick. A control scheme that invited both strategy and a bit of showmanship. The game's roster was small, but the real discovery came from experimenting with the controls. Players swapped rumors about hidden moves like the Fireball, Hadouken, that could turn the tide of a match if you figured out the secret input. Early tournaments and local rivalries sprang up as bragging rights depended on both skill and the ability to uncover these special attacks. Street Fighter didn't have the depth or the cast of its sequel, but it laid the foundation for every competitive fighting game that followed. Its head-to-head battles and secret move culture planted the seed for an arcade revolution just around the corner. Donkey Kong Jr. turned the tables in 1982, casting players not as the hero, but as the villain's child on a rescue mission. This time, Mario was the antagonist, locking Donkey Kong in a cage and forcing his son to climb, swing, and dodge hazards to set him free. The game traded the ladders of the original for ropes and vines, introducing a new way to navigate vertical levels. Players learned to grip two vines for faster climbing or one to slide down quickly, adding a layer of strategy to every screen. Key puzzles and moving platforms kept the action fresh, while the multi-stage loop encouraged high-score chases. Donkey Kong Jr. didn't just flip the story, it expanded what platformers could do, blending puzzle elements with arcade action and paving the way for Nintendo's future experiments. Galaga, released in 1981 by Namco, sharpened the fixed shooter formula to near perfection. At first it looks familiar, waves of alien ships swoop in, weaving through tight attack patterns. But Galaga's real twist lies in its tractor beam, a daring enemy move that can snatch your ship right off the screen. Letting yourself get captured isn't a mistake, it's a calculated risk. If you rescue your own fighter later, you double your firepower, unlocking the coveted dual ship mode. Suddenly, every shot and dodge carries extra weight, and high-score chasers weigh the danger for a shot at leaderboard glory. Bonus challenge stages break up the action, rewarding precision and pattern mastery. Decades later, Galaga's blend of risk, skill, and polish keeps it a fixture in arcades and high-score halls, proof that pure, refined design never goes out of style. Mortal Kombat's arcade debut came in 1992, just outside the 1980s, but its impact was impossible to ignore. Midway's cabinet turned heads with digitized actors, bone-crunching sound, and the now infamous fatalities, finishing moves so graphic they became instant playground legend. Parents and politicians took notice. The game's violence landed it in congressional hearings, where senators like Joe Lieberman called for tighter controls on arcade content. The uproar didn't stop kids from lining up to play, but it did spark something bigger. Mortal Kombat became the main reason the ESRB rating system was created, forever changing how games were regulated and sold in America. Though its release date earns it an asterisk here, Mortal Kombat's cultural shockwave and the panic it triggered cements its place among the most influential arcade titles ever. Pac-Man didn't just fill arcades, it took over the world. Launched in 1980 by Namco, the Yellow Pellet Muncher became the highest-grossing arcade game of all time, pulling in billions of dollars in quarters alone. But the real phenomenon began outside the game room. Pac-Man's simple, non-violent maze chase drew crowds far beyond the usual arcade crowd, including women and families who hadn't felt welcome at the machines before. Merchandising reached a fever pitch. Lunchboxes, pajamas, breakfast cereal, and a Saturday morning cartoon all carried that unmistakable grin. Even the pop charts weren't safe. Pac-Man fever hit the Billboard Top 10 in 1982. With its instantly recognizable mascot and universal appeal, Pac-Man transformed video games from a niche hobby into a global pop culture force. No other arcade cabinet sparked a frenzy quite like it, and the revenue numbers still stand unmatched decades later. Donkey Kong arrived in arcades in 1981 just as Nintendo faced a crisis. Their previous game, Radar Scope, had flopped in North America, leaving warehouses full of unsold cabinets. Shigeru Miyamoto, a young designer with no programming experience, was given a chance to turn things around. His idea, an ape atop a construction site rolling barrels at a determined hero, transformed those Radar Scope cabinets into something unforgettable. Players met Jumpman, later known as Mario, for the first time as he climbed ladders to rescue Pauline. The game's structure introduced a true narrative to platformers, with each level telling a piece of the story. Donkey Kong's success didn't just save Nintendo, it set off a legal battle when Universal Studios claimed the game infringed on King Kong's copyright. In court, Nintendo's lawyers revealed Universal had previously argued King Kong was public domain. The judge sided with Nintendo, a win that secured their place in the industry and set a precedent for video game copyright law. Donkey Kong's legacy lives on, not just through Mario, but as the moment when arcade games proved they could tell stories as well as challenge reflexes. Street Fighter II exploded onto the arcade scene in 1991, instantly rewriting the rules for competitive gaming. Capcom's 6-button control scheme let players choose between 3 punch strengths and 3 kicks, unlocking a depth of tactics never seen before. 8 distinct fighters, from Ryu's fireballs to Chun-Li's lightning kicks, meant every matchup felt fresh, and the discovery of combo attacks turned the game into a test of both reflex and creativity. Local tournaments sprang up almost overnight, with cabinets crowded by players eager to prove themselves. Operators reported record earnings as lines formed for a chance to play, and the game's influence spread far beyond Japan. Street Fighter II didn't just perfect the fighting genre, it built the foundation for esports, transforming arcades into arenas where legends were made one quarter at a time. Asteroids, released by Atari in 1979, set a new technical benchmark with its luminous vector graphics. Instead of painting images with a grid of pixels, Asteroids used a digital vector generator board to direct electron beams across a monochrome display, drawing razor-sharp white lines that glowed against the dark. The 5-button control panel, thrust, rotate left and right, fire, and hyperspace, gave players precise command of a ship floating in open space, where every push carried real weight thanks to inertia-based physics. Unlike traditional shooters, movement didn't stop when the button did. Momentum lingered, forcing players to plan every drift and spin. The wraparound screen meant danger never left, as asteroids and enemy saucers could reappear from any edge. Powered by a 6502 CPU, the game's hardware was both advanced and temperamental. Vector monitors were prone to high-voltage failures and phosphor burn-in, making maintenance a constant concern for arcade operators. Yet the glowing lines and smooth motion kept crowds coming back, cementing Asteroids as a masterpiece of minimalist design and a high watermark for hardware innovation. Tetris began in a Moscow research lab where Alexei Pajitnov pieced together falling blocks on a Soviet computer in 1984. The puzzle's hypnotic loop, rotate, drop, clear lines, proved irresistible, spreading from floppy disks to arcades worldwide. Atari's 1988 cabinet brought the game's pure design to the floor, but behind the scenes, a licensing storm brewed. L-Org, the Soviet agency, controlled the rights, sparking a years-long legal maze. Pajitnov's creation reached every corner of the globe, but he wouldn't see royalties for years. No mascots, no flash, just a universal challenge, endlessly replayable. That's why Tetris stands alone at number 1. From the quirky chaos of Bubble Bobble to the pure puzzle mastery of Tetris, our countdown of the top 30 1980s arcade games charts a journey through creativity, competition, and cultural impact. Across all entries, one pattern stands out. Each game pushed boundaries, whether through hardware innovation like Asteroids' vector display, the social draw of Pac-Man, or genre-defining mechanics in Street Fighter II. The most surprising moments include Mortal Kombat's controversial late inclusion, Dragon's Lair's eye-popping animation despite hardware woes, and the enduring simplicity that propelled Tetris to the top. This ranking measured not just popularity, but influence, technical leap, and lasting legacy. What emerges is a picture of the arcade as a laboratory for both design genius and unforgettable pop icons. These games weren't just pastimes, they shaped generations and laid the groundwork for today's gaming culture. The 1980s arcade era proved that a handful of quarters and a glowing screen could launch global phenomena, making these cabinets true legends of interactive entertainment.